When Officer Daniel and his K-9 partner Rex walked into Class 4B, they expected nothing more than a routine school pickup. But what they discovered inside made every parent's nightmare come true. His foster son was in tears, and the shocking truth behind those walls would change everything. Officer Daniel adjusted his uniform as he parked his cruiser near the school gates. The afternoon sun glinted off the badge on his chest. But what warmed him most was the thought of seeing his foster son, Adam. Beside him sat Rex, his loyal German Shepherd K-9, who gave an eager bark as if he too knew it was time for family. Every day after duty, Daniel made sure to pick Adam up personally. For a boy who had faced too much loss too early, these small gestures meant the world. Daniel wanted him to know he would never feel abandoned again. Rex wagged his tail, pressing his nose against the window, impatient to greet Adam. As Daniel entered the hallway, the familiar smell of chalk and floor polish filled the air. He smiled, expecting laughter and chatter from the classrooms. But today, something felt different. The corridors were far too quiet. Usually, students ran past with backpacks swinging, teachers called out reminders, and laughter filled the air. But today, the silence was unsettling. A hushed tension seemed to hang in the air like a storm waiting to break. He passed a few children by the lockers, but none of them looked up to greet him. Instead, they kept their eyes down, shoulders stiff, as if afraid to be noticed. One little girl clutched her books so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Daniel frowned, his instincts sharpening. Something wasn't right here. Rex stopped suddenly, his ears pricking up. The shepherd's tail stiffened, and a low rumble formed in his throat. Daniel gave him a quick glance. He had learned long ago never to ignore Rex's signals. His partner's unease only deepened the pit in his stomach. At the end of the corridor, the door to Class 4B loomed. A faint sound drifted out, soft, stifled sobs. Daniel's hand tightened on the knob. Daniel pushed open the classroom door, and the sight that met his eyes froze him in place. At the front row sat Adam, his foster son, tears streaming down his face. His small hands trembled as he tried to shield himself, his knuckles red and raw. The air was thick with fear, heavy enough that even Rex let out a sharp bark of alarm. Hovering over Adam was his teacher, her face twisted with rage, a wooden ruler clutched tightly in her hand. She barked words Daniel couldn't fully process, her voice sharp and merciless. Around the room, other children sat rigid at their desks, eyes wide with terror, not daring to move. Some had tears brimming, but no one spoke. The silence was deafening. Rex growled low, his muscles tense, body leaning forward as if ready to spring. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. Every protective instinct screamed at him, but his training kept him steady. This wasn't just discipline. This was cruelty. His son was in danger, and a line had been crossed. The teacher raised her ruler again, but before it could strike, Rex barked so fiercely the sound rattled the windows. Daniel stepped forward. The confrontation had begun. Step away from him. Daniel's voice cut through the heavy silence like a blade. The teacher froze, her knuckles tightening on the ruler as if she couldn't let go. Her eyes darted toward the uniform, then to the growling German shepherd at his side. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. "I was only disciplining him," she stammered, her voice sharp but trembling. "This boy refuses to follow instructions, and I run my classroom with order." She tried to sound firm, but the fear in her eyes betrayed her. Daniel's gaze hardened, every fiber of him resisting the urge to act on anger alone. Behind him, Rex inched closer to Adam, planting himself like a shield between the child and the teacher. The room was so quiet that Daniel could hear the shallow breaths of every student. Their small faces were pale, lips pressed tight, eyes silently begging for someone to intervene. He knew then this wasn't an isolated incident. This classroom had been living under fear for far too long. Daniel took a steady breath, his voice calm but firm. "No classroom justifies cruelty. Not to my son. Not to any child." For a long moment, no one spoke. The teacher stood frozen, her jaw tight, her grip on the ruler unyielding. Daniel's eyes scanned the room, seeing the fear carved into the children's faces. It was more than just Adam who had suffered. He could feel it in the way they avoided his gaze, their silence screaming louder than words. Then, from the back row, a small voice broke the stillness. "It's not just him," a boy whispered, his hands trembling as he gripped the edge of his desk. The teacher snapped her head around, eyes narrowing, but the boy pressed on, voice quivering yet determined. She hurts all of us. Whenever someone makes a mistake, whenever someone speaks up, gasps rippled through the room. Daniel's heart clenched as the truth settled over him. His foster son wasn't the only victim. This entire class had been living under tyranny. The boy's courage seemed to spark others. One by one, children began nodding, some with tears streaming down their cheeks. Rex let out a low, mournful whine, sensing the pain that filled the room. Daniel's jaw tightened. This was no misunderstanding. His instincts, and Rex's, had been right all along. It was time to act. Daniel squared his shoulders, his voice carrying the weight of both a father and an officer. "Enough," he commanded, his eyes fixed on the trembling teacher. The authority in his tone made her falter, her hand finally dropping the ruler. Around the room, students straightened, as if sensing for the first time that someone truly stood on their side. He stepped closer, his gaze unflinching. "These children are under your care, not your control. Discipline doesn't mean fear. And cruelty is not teaching." Each word hit the air like a hammer striking steel. The teacher's lips pressed into a thin line, but she had no reply. Rex moved forward, settling firmly at Adam's feet, his presence radiating protection. Daniel turned to the class, his voice softening. "You're safe now. No one will hurt you again." The words seemed to unlock something deep inside the children. Shoulders sagged in relief. A few sobs broke free, and Adam leaned into Rex, his small hands buried in the shepherd's fur. For the first time, the heavy cloud of fear that had hung in the classroom began to lift. Daniel knew the fight wasn't over, but the children finally had hope, and that was enough. Adam couldn't hold back any longer. The moment Daniel crouched down beside him, he threw his arms around Rex's neck, burying his tear-streaked face in the shepherd's thick fur. Rex nuzzled him gently, letting out a soft whine, as if to say he'd never let harm touch his boy again. The bond between them spoke louder than words. Daniel rested a steady hand on his foster son's back, his voice low but full of conviction. "You're safe now, Adam. I promise, no one will ever make you feel this way again." His words weren't just reassurance, they were a vow. He felt Adam's small body tremble against him, but slowly, the boy's grip loosened, his breathing easing in the comfort of safety. Around the room, the other children watched with wide eyes. Some wiped away tears, others gave shaky smiles. For the first time, they saw not just an officer, but a father willing to fight for his child, and by extension, for them all. Hope flickered in their faces, fragile but alive. The nightmare was ending, and light was breaking through. The authorities arrived quickly, and the teacher was escorted from the classroom, her protests drowned out by the steady footsteps of justice. For the first time, Class 4B could breathe freely. The heavy weight that had suffocated them for so long was finally lifted. Daniel guided Adam out of the school, Rex walking proudly at their side. The boy held on to his father's hand with one arm and Rex's collar with the other, as though he had found his anchors in a world that once felt unsafe. Sometimes heroes wear uniforms. Sometimes they walk on four paws. And sometimes, they come together to save a child's world.